Berserkers. Now there is a name that we've all heard. You have, haven't you? Legendary warriors with bear-like fury and inhuman strength. They're the stuff of Norse legend found in countless sagas, games, and stories. But here's something that most people don't know. The Berserkers? They weren't alone. There were others, at least as we record them here in the tavern. 3 more tribes, if you will. Each with their own fierce identity, their own unique creeds, and terrifying power. So grab a seat, fill your mug, and settle in. Tonight we're diving into the world of the wild men of the Great White North. The 4 tribes of the Berserkers who are as wild as the untamed wilderness that they lived in. And hold on tight, because this story takes some twists and turns, my friends. Let's start with the most well-known, the Berserkers, the Norse warriors who fought with frenzied, almost supernatural rage, entering a state where pain and fear meant almost nothing. The name Berserker, it comes from the Old Norse, meaning something akin to bear shirt, and this is believed to be because many of them wore the pelts of bears, or nothing at all, into battle. And in battle, they came as more beast than man, biting their shields, howling like animals, and their eyes burning with an untamed fury. They were the embodiment of the bear's strength, charging headlong into enemy lines, unstoppable and terrifying. And in some of the old sagas, they're described as men touched by the gods, and some even say they might have been possessed by the spirit of the bears themselves. And in battle, they weren't just feared for their power, but their unholy rage. And that was what seemed to drive them forward, making them untouchable by blade or fear, or at least that's how the legends go. And who's to really know or say where the bear spirit ended and the man began? It is a question that has remained all but too vague over the many centuries, almost like a lingering cold chill on the north winds of ancient times. And if you thought Berserkers were terrifying and formidable, allow me to introduce you to the Ulfhednar, the wolf warriors of the north. Now, these men didn't charge in recklessly like the Berserkers did. No, they were more akin to hunters, moving with the silence and cunning of the wolf pack. Often cloaked in wolf pelts, they were said to stalk their prey, striking more from the shadow, their movements unseen and deadly, making them more myth than men. And just when you think you're safe, you might hear a rustle in the leaves, or it might already be too late. And you're dining in the halls of Valhall, wondering how the hell you got there. They were said to fight alongside the wolves of Odin in some instances, and often it was believed that they could shapeshift into wolves during the moonlight. And there are even legends of such things happening to very famous individuals, such as in the Volsung saga. They embodied the wolf's spirits, cunning, relentless, and swift, while the Berserkers fought with raw, uncontrolled fury. The Ulfhednar struck like predators, patient and precise, their power born of the hunt. They were feared for their ability to disappear into the wilderness and return with blood on their hands. But the Berserkers and the Ulfhednar were not the only terrifying warriors to dwell in the north. Let me tell you about the Jöfurr or Svinfylking, 2 names for what I believe to be the same group that fought with absolute relentlessness next to kings. The Jöfurr were no wild men. They were disciplined protectors, guardians if you will, the guardians of jarls, chieftains, and kings. Their name means boar heads, and it symbolized the respect that the Norse had for the boar and aligned them with the Norse ancestor Freyr, who was the brother of Freya, son of Njordr, god of the sea. The Jöfurr warriors wore boar helms or sometimes boar heads and served as elite bodyguards for royalty and diplomats, usually standing as the last defense for leaders. And unlike predictable berserkers who eventually had to be outlawed because of their erratic behavior, the Jöfurr, they were reliable, steadfast, battle-hardened, and every bit as deadly as their counterparts of the bear and wolf. It was often said that if a Jöfurr stood by your side, you were in the hands of the gods. Their discipline and organization made them invaluable, especially in the heat of battle. And finally, we have one that comes exclusively from the stories and halls of the tavern, handed down through many generations of storyteller, the Blóðjager. Probably the most secretive group of all, known as the Blood Hunters. And these warriors, they were something different, something darker. While the Berserkers and the Ulfhednar, they fought out in the open, the Blóðjager, they fought from the shadows. They were essentially assassins, hired to eliminate rivals, both political and military. Their name does in fact mean Blood Hunter, and they earned that name. They didn't roar into battle like their counterparts, no, they struck in the dead of night, swift and silent, leaving no trace behind. Not much is known about them, but their legend endures with passing mentions in sagas here and there about bloody ravens. And there are some old stories that say they might have been responsible for some of the most pivotal assassinations in the Viking Age. And finally we come to the power source of the Berserker, the Berserkergang, and it was what made these warriors truly terrifying. Some referred to it as the trance of the wild. This was no mere battle rage, it was something deeper, something primal. When the Berserker, the Ulfhednar, the Jöfurr, and even the Blóðjager, whenever they entered this trance, they became something more, or possibly less, than men. They became forces of nature, embodying the very beasts whose flesh they wore. And in the old sagas, it was said that the trance was a gift from Odin himself, a blessing that allowed these warriors to tap into something ancient, something wild and untamable that lives in us all. And because of it, in battle, nothing could stop them, not fear, not pain, and sometimes not even death itself. And this is why eventually kings in Scandinavia would outlaw the Berserkers. Because it's not as though they were exactly upstanding members of society to begin with. Many of them were less than respectable beings who acted in less than respectable ways. But there you have it, my friends. The story of the wild men of the North. They may have faded into legend, but the spirit of their stories live on in the stories, in the sagas, and perhaps even in the wildest parts of our hearts. These warriors were more than just men. They were the embodiment of something untamed, something that we all still carry very deep inside of us, that has been placated by the modern comforts. And maybe, if you listen hard enough to your own heart, you might just hear the call of the wild, my friends. Isn't that fascinating? Stay bloodthirsty, and I will see you the next time you come in for a story.